If you feel lost in your 20s right now, it's not because you don't know what to do, it's because you're not doing what you already know you should. I had goals, I knew what I wanted, I wasn't completely lost, but every year I somehow ended up in the exact same place. I'll tell myself, this is the year things change. This is the year I actually take it seriously. At the start, I meant it. I'd feel motivated, make plans, start something, and for a bit it felt like I was moving forward. But then I'd slow down. I'd start overthinking, lose momentum, and tell myself I needed more clarity, that I needed to be sure, that I needed a better plan. And before I even realized, months had gone by. Then the year's gone, and I'm still stuck in the same situation with the same results again. And I remember thinking, how am I still here? Because in my head, I felt like I was trying. I was thinking about my goals every single day. I'd wake up at 7 a.m., drive to work, and even on the way there, I wasn't really present. I would just be thinking about business ideas, ways to make money, and how I could change my life. I'd get to work, sit at my desk, and mentally I was somewhere else. Even during the day, on my breaks, on my walks, I wasn't really there. I was just in my head the whole time, thinking about what I could be doing instead, thinking about the life I wanted, the life I felt like I should be living. And that was the frustrating part, because I could see it so clearly in my head, but I wasn't actually doing anything real to get there. I'd finish work, go to the gym, come home, and I'll tell myself, alright, now I'm going to actually do something. But if I'm being honest, most days I didn't do anything. Maybe I'd watch a few videos or I would spend a little bit of time here and there trying something, but nothing consistent that actually moved the needle forward. And the worst part is, I didn't even realize how little I was actually doing because mentally I felt busy. I felt like I was in it, like I was on the path, like I was trying. But if you actually looked at what I was doing, there was almost nothing there. No real output or real progress being made. I was just thinking a lot and not doing anything. Why it felt like progress. And that's what confused me because in my head, it genuinely felt like I was doing something. I was thinking about it all the time. I'd sit there going over ideas, how I'd make money, what I'd do differently, what my life would look like once I figured things out. And in those moments, it felt real, like I was getting closer. I'd watch a video and think, yeah, this is it. I'll take notes, rewrite things, think about how I'd apply it. And I'd leave that feeling motivated, like I'd actually made progress. But nothing actually happened because I wasn't building anything. I wasn't putting anything out there. I wasn't testing anything. I was just preparing. And the thing is, preparation feels productive. And that's the trap because it gives you that feeling of progress without any of the risk. No one can reject you, no one can ignore you, nothing can go wrong. It feels comfortable. So I stayed there, not knowing I wasn't making any progress, thinking, planning, telling myself, don't worry, you've got this. This is easy. I just need a bit more time. But if you really look at it, nothing is actually moving. And that's why it's so dangerous, because it felt like I was keeping busy, working, but I was actually avoiding it. And I didn't see that at the time. I thought I was putting in effort. I thought I was on the right path. But if I'm being honest, I wasn't doing enough. What I thought the problem was, I didn't really see it properly at the time. I thought the problem was something else. I thought I just needed more information, more certainty, a better plan. Like, like if I could just figure things out a bit more, then I'd finally start. So I stayed there, thinking and over analyzing everything, telling myself I was being smart about it, but really I was just delaying it. At the same time, I was watching other people win. People making 10k months, people building things, people actually moving forward. And if I'm being honest, what bothered me wasn't even the money, it was the fact that I didn't think they were more capable than me. I'd look at them and think, they're not smarter than me. They didn't come from anything crazy. They're not doing something impossible. I actually felt a bit arrogant, to be honest. So I'd ask myself, what's the difference? And that question just stayed in my head because it forced me to actually look at myself properly. I couldn't keep hiding behind I don't know enough or I'm not ready yet or I need more time because clearly that wasn't it. And that's when I started to realize I remember thinking, I don't want to be 40 still doing this, still stuck, still thinking about it, still saying one day, because the truth is, you don't really feel time passing day to day. It feels slow, it feels like you've got time, but then you look back and years have gone and nothing has changed. Around that time, I had a few losses in my family and it just made everything feel real. It made me realize this isn't something you can keep putting off. This isn't something you can just say you'll figure out later, because later isn't guaranteed. And that's when the pressure became real. Not from anyone else, just from myself. I started asking myself, what am I actually doing? Because I knew what I wanted, I could see it clearly, but I also knew I wasn't doing what it takes to get there. And that gap between what I wanted and what I was actually doing started to feel uncomfortable. And that discomfort was the start of the shift, because at that point I couldn't ignore it anymore. It wasn't just a thought in the back of my head, it was something I had to face. The real problem. Up until that point, I was comfortable. I had savings, I was living at home, there was no real pressure. Nothing was forcing me to change. And if I'm being honest, that was kind of the problem. Because when you're comfortable, you can delay everything. You can tell yourself, I'll start next week, or I'll take it seriously next month. I just need a bit more time. But then nothing happens. There's no real consequence, there's no urgency. So you just stay there longer than you should. That's exactly what I was doing. I had just enough stability to not feel pressure, but not enough progress to actually move forward. So I ended up stuck in the middle. And at some point, I had to be honest with myself. It wasn't that I didn't know what to do. I knew. I knew I needed to take action, to be consistent, and to take risk. I just wasn't doing it. And that's not an easy thing to admit, because it's a lot easier to tell yourself, I need more time, I need more clarity, I just need a better plan. But the truth was a lot simpler than that. I was avoiding it. Avoid putting myself out there, avoiding committing properly, avoiding the risk of actually trying and failing. Because once you actually commit, once you go all in, you don't have that safety anymore. Now it's real. Now you can't hide anymore. Now you can't hide behind preparation. Now there's a chance it doesn't work. And that's uncomfortable. So instead, you stay in the middle ground, doing just enough to feel like you're trying, but not actually enough to get results. And that's exactly where I was. Not lost, just avoiding the things I knew I needed to do. Why I stayed stuck? Because if I'm being honest, I was scared. Not just of failing in a small way, but of actually going all in and it's still not working out. Because if that happens, there's nothing left to hide behind. You can't say you didn't try. You can't say you needed more time. You can't say you didn't know enough. It becomes real. And I think that was what I was avoiding. So instead, I stayed in that middle ground where it felt like I was trying, but I wasn't really committing. Trying, but not fully trying. Planning, but not actually doing anything. Thinking, but not really moving. Doing just enough to feel like I was on the right path, but not enough to actually get anywhere. Because in that space, you're kind of protected. You can still believe it's going to work out. You can still tell yourself you're working on it. You can still feel like you're making progress without ever having to prove it. And that's the trap. Because nothing forces you to face reality there. There's no feedback, rejection, or results, just potential. And potential feels good. It lets you believe that one day everything will click and work out. But that one day never comes if your actions don't change. And that's where most people stay. Not because they can't do it, but because they never fully step out of that safe zone. They stay in that space where they can think about success without doing the things that actually lead to it. What finally changed? Everything shifted when I stopped trying to figure everything out. I just started doing something. Not perfectly or with full clarity, just doing something. Because before that, I was stuck in my own head, trying to think my way forward, plan my way out of it, trying to feel ready before I actually did anything. And that moment never came. So the change wasn't something big. There was no breakthrough. It wasn't like I suddenly figured everything out or I had the perfect strategy. It was a lot simpler than that. I just stopped waiting. I stopped trying to feel ready and I started doing the things I already knew I should be doing. Even when it felt uncomfortable, even when it felt messy, even when I had no idea if it was going to work. And the biggest shift for me was this. I started seeing people with similar backgrounds to me making real money. Not people with crazy advantages, not people miles ahead in life, just normal people. people who started in similar positions. And that made it real for me because I couldn't keep telling myself that it won't work for me, or I'm different, or I need something else first. That excuse kind of disappeared. And I remember thinking, if they can do it, why can't I? And that question stuck with me because there wasn't really any good answer other than the fact that I wasn't doing enough. That was it. There's no more learning to do. You don't need a better plan. You just need to decide that you need to take action. You need to decide to stop sitting on the sidelines and actually step into it. To stop thinking about the life I wanted and start doing something that could actually move me forwards. And once I made that decision, things started to change. Not instantly, but directionally. Because for the first time, I was actually doing something and moving. What action actually feels like. And when I started, it didn't feel amazing. It felt uncomfortable, it felt slow, and it felt uncertain. There wasn't some big moment where everything just clicked for me. There was no sudden confidence or feeling like, this is it, I figured it out. If anything, it felt like the opposite. It felt messy. I was actually a bit scared. I was constantly thinking I was going to fail. I would sit there thinking, am I even doing this right? Second guessing everything, overthinking small things that probably didn't even matter. Sometimes I would do something and feel like it didn't count, like it wasn't enough, like I should be doing more. And because I didn't get results straight away, it's really easy to start doubting yourself. I started to think, is this even working? Am I wasting my time? Should I be doing something else? And that's what action actually feels like. There's no excitement, it's not motivating, it's just uncomfortable. But the difference is, it's actually real. Because now you're not just thinking about it anymore, you're actually in it. You're doing something that could lead to a result. Even if it's small, even if it's slow, even if you don't fully understand it yet. But you're still moving, and that's what matters. Because even though it feels uncertain, it starts to build something. You start getting feedback, you start seeing what works and what doesn't. You start learning from real situations, not just theory. And over time, that's what turns into confidence. And at the end of the day, confidence comes from competence. That's when it starts to shift. But at the beginning, it just feels like you're doing something you're not used to and sticking with it anyway. The truth about progress. Thinking about your goals feels good. Planning feels productive. Learning feels like progress. You can sit there for hours watching videos, taking notes, thinking things through, and when you're done, it feels like you've done something. Like you're a closer, like you're on the right path. And that's the dangerous part, because that feeling is enough to keep you where you're at. In that moment, you don't feel stuck. You feel like you're improving, so you keep doing it. More videos, more planning, more thinking, but nothing in your actual life changes because none of that actually moves forward. It doesn't create results, it doesn't create opportunities, it doesn't put you in the position where something can actually happen. The only thing that can do that is by taking action. It creates movement, it gives you feedback, and it's what creates outcomes. But action is also the thing that most people avoid because it exposes you. It takes everything out of your head and puts it into the real world. And in the real world, there's nothing to hide. You find out pretty quickly what works and what doesn't. You find out where you're actually at, and you find out how far you really are from where you need to be. And that's uncomfortable because it removes the illusion. You can't just feel like you're making progress anymore. Now it's real, visible, and measurable. And most people would rather stay in a place where they feel good than step into a place where they might feel exposed. So they stay in preparation, they stay in learning, they stay in that safe loop. But the truth is, progress only happens when something is actually on the line. When you're doing something that could go wrong, something that might fail, something that might not work. And that's where you actually grow, in real situations. And once you see that, you stop chasing that feeling of progress and start focusing on actual progress. And that's when things start to change. What I wish I knew earlier. I used to think I needed to know exactly what I was doing before I started. Like there was some level I had to reach first, some point where everything would make sense. But that moment never came, because it doesn't really exist. You only figure things out by doing them, by making mistakes, getting things wrong, adjusting as you go, and by learning in real time. Not in your head, not through theory, but through actual real life experience. And I didn't get that at the time. So I spent years waiting, telling myself things like I'd start properly when I know more, or I just need to figure this out. But the more I waited, the more I stayed in the same place. Because nothing was actually changing. I was just delaying the thing that moved me forward. And the truth is, confidence doesn't come before action, it comes after. You don't wake up one day feeling ready. You build that feeling up by showing up, by doing things you're not fully comfortable with, by pushing through that uncertainty, by proving to yourself that you can actually handle the stress. That's how confidence is built, not by thinking about it. And once I've realized that, things started to shift because I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't trying to feel ready. I was just acting anyway. Even if it felt messy, even if I didn't have all the answers, even if I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. And that's when things actually started moving. Not when I understood everything, but when I stopped waiting to understand everything. What you need to do. So if you feel stuck right now, like time is passing and nothing is really changing, this is probably what you need to hear. You don't need more information, you don't need another plan. You don't need to figure everything out first. Because if you're being honest, you already know what you should be doing. You probably thought about it. You've seen it. You probably even told yourself a few times that I need to start this or I should be doing that. I know what I need to do. You're just not doing it. And that's the problem. It's not knowledge or strategy. You need to take action. You just need to start doing the things you already know you should be doing. Even if it's small, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if you don't feel ready. Because waiting doesn't fix that. Waiting just keeps you where you're at. And the longer you wait, the easier it becomes to keep waiting. So instead of trying to fix everything at once, just focus on one thing, one action, one step, something simple that actually moves you forward. And just do it today. Not perfectly, not for hours, just do it. Then do it again tomorrow and the day after that. Because that's what actually breaks the cycle. Not motivation, not inspiration, just showing up, even when you don't feel like it. Because nothing changes until your actions do. And once your actions start to change, your situation starts to change with it. Slowly at first, but then it builds. And that's when you realize you were never really stuck. You just needed to move forward. Simple next steps. Instead of trying to fix everything at once, just focus on one thing. Take one step, do it today, then just do it again tomorrow. That's it. And over time, that's what builds momentum. That's what creates progress, and that's what ends up changing everything. I'm not saying this like I've got everything figured out. I'm saying it because I was stuck in that exact place for years. Thinking, planning, telling myself I'd start soon, and nothing really changed until I actually did something. So if you're in that position right now, just be honest with yourself. You probably already know what you should be doing, you're just not doing it. And that's fine, that's where everyone starts. But don't stay there, because the longer you stay in that loop, the harder it becomes to get out of it. At some point, you just have to decide. Not that everything's going to work, not that you've got a perfect plan, just decide that you're not going to stay in that same place anymore. And then do something. Anything. Because nothing changes until you do. You don't need more time, you just need to start. But anyways, that's the end of this video, and I'll see you in the next one.